We are getting ready to get started, and we just wanted to remember the most wonderful Harry Belafonte. So thank you for joining us. My name is Suzette Ramson. I'm the director of the Office of Campus Life. And welcome to our second night of leadership conversations, elevating the voices of Bronx leaders, and not just any leaders, but the most impactful, powerful, inspirational folks. I'm looking forward very much to today's conversation with the very exceptional Noelle Santos, who has really revolutionized the Bronx literary scene. Before we officially start, I want to acknowledge Dr. Janet DeSimone for always collaborating with us to coordinate this series. Dr. DeSimone is the force behind leadership studies, as most of us know on this call, the MSOL and the EDOL at Lehman, and our wonderful Office of Campus Life, David Chakape, the Director of Clubs and Organizations, Nathaniel Gaskew, our Assistant Director of Budgets, Patricia McDonough, who's our Food Bank Coordinator, and the very wonderful Miss Emily Weiland, our SGA Representative and Leadership Instructor. Emily will now introduce Miss Noelle Santos.
Hello, everyone. Noelle Santos is the proprietress of the very popular Lit Bar. She is an African-American and Puerto Rican venture activist from the Bronx. She is a lifelong reader. Her studies at Lehman College earned her both a bachelor's degree in business accounting in 2009 and a master's degree in human resources management in 2012. She is living her best life owning and operating the only bookstore in the Bronx. The Lit Bar is just as multifaceted as she is. A bookstore, wine bar, community center with a graffiti and chandelier theme, much like her life. Many famous guests have celebrated her bookstore, such as Barack Obama, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and J.Lo. Please give it up for Noelle.
Thank you for having me, y'all.
Thank you for coming.
So I just want to make a little update since the last time I've checked my bio. So I'm the only brick and mortar bookstore, but the Bronx literary scene is no longer underground. We have an awesome bookmobile, Bronx Bound Books, and Literary Freedom Project is doing some amazing things on the Bronx literary scene. So I just want to shout them out.
Wow. So Noelle, we would love to just hear a little bit about your life, a little bit about how you got started. I mean, I don't know if you guys caught this, but she literally went to Lehman, and why you started a bookstore in the Bronx.
Yes. So if you see me looking down at any moment, it's because I have ADHD diagnosed for real. And I made notes so I don't lose track. All right. So why a bookstore in the Bronx? So in 2014, I was at work on Facebook, don't judge, and I came across a petition online that said the only bookstore in the Bronx was just in jeopardy of being displaced. I signed the petition, got some friends to sign the petition, and that was not satisfying to me. I used to live at that Barnes & Noble. Like, it was like my happy place. It was where I went for every spectrum of my emotions. Or if I just wanted like a place to have some peace, that's where I went. And I was so outraged that such a vital resource in our community was in jeopardy of closing. I was watching the news and reading articles, and I would see the politicians, the property owners, and Barnes & Noble, the actual corporation, like just, pointing fingers at each other at whose fault it was. And I'm just sitting there watching, like, y'all are the adults. Y'all are the adults. Like, how did we even get here? Why is this up for negotiation? And it was just ridiculous to me. And it was in that moment, I was just so outraged that I was like, I'm going to do it myself. At that time, I had been working in human resources management, did exactly what I studied in college, which like never happened. So I was like very cushy in my career, 23 years old with my master's degree, and already making six figures. And I pretty much lit my life on fire to go on this journey. So what my journey entails, my startup journey. So signed that petition in 2014. I was incorporated by that following January. I do not play. I Googled how to open a bookstore, and this link came up to the American Booksellers Association, which is Indie Bookstores National Trade Association. And I called them up and they replied back to me with a checklist. The first thing on the checklist said, go to Florida for this 2-week course called Owning a Bookstore. It was in this little island that I never heard of called Amelia Island. And I went, and I didn't get all the answers from that course, but I left with all the questions that I would need to answer to to find my path. In that class, there was a gentleman, one of my classmates, and he said, I entered this business plan competition a couple years back and I lost. But after getting to know you during this course, I think you have the chops. I think you have what it takes. So I came back to New York and I entered this competition. It was run by Citibank, and the prize for the finalists, I think it was like a couple dozen finalists, was for you to get your business plan reviewed by like these top execs at these big corporations. So that was the prize for me, was just to get my, business plan complete using the resources that they gave you during this competition. It was a 10-month long competition, pitches and all these rounds. And I was up against 360 other businesses, inventions and tech companies and apps all over New York City. And I won by accident. So that created me winning that. Everybody in New York City is like, who's this girl? Regular, schmegular girl from the Bronx. She talks like this, hoop earrings. And, she wants to open a bookstore in the poorest congressional district in the United States. Like, I got my first little bit of buzz because, that it just shook people up. So that created a sense of urgency, I believe, to support me in the lit bar, because that was a big deal for me to win that competition, and everybody was looking at me. At the same time, the lit bar, at that time, the Barnes and Noble, which was the last bookstore in the Bronx at that time, they were set to close at the same time. So everything just aligned. All the media was talking about the closing. At the same time, I'm winning this competition, and now everybody's looking at me. So now it's time to bring my business plan, my award-winning business plan to life. But I didn't have any money. So I launched the crowdfunding campaign reluctantly. I didn't feel like I was begging for dollars. But I got over it, and so glad that I did. My original goal was $100,000. And I ended up raising $200,000 in 37 days. So we doubled the goal. And by we, I mean me on the floor at 3:00 in the morning. I was still working full time up until the day my construction started in 2018. And I spent like 6 months looking for an actual location. It was so challenging because people didn't believe that a bookstore would be viable in the Bronx. People believe the stigma that we don't read here, but I knew better. I had spent a lot of time during the course of that competition, like studying the market, and just engaging the community, doing pop-up shops, studying the market in different ways. So I believed that it was viable, but getting the stakeholder to believe that, that was a challenge. And we could dig more into that during the talk. So that was a challenge. It took me 6 months. People on Twitter like, oh, she ran off with the money. No, I was just struggling. So 6 months later, I signed the lease, and then I spent the next year in construction hell. And, and then National Independent Bookstore Day on April 27th, which is in 2 days, I opened the Lit Bar. So on April 27th, I'm going to be celebrating our 4-year anniversary. And well, it is our 4-year anniversary. The actual big celebration will take place this Saturday at the Lit Bar. We have lots of fun things planned that we can talk about in this conversation today.
Wow, that's so inspirational, Noelle. Can you tell us a little bit about who were some of your supporters, your biggest supporters?
Oh man. I want to say start by like just acknowledging the community at large. Because like my crowdfunding campaign had gone viral, but what a lot of people don't know is that it didn't go viral until we hit like the $80,000 mark. That money came from mostly the community, and my average donation was like $81. So $200,000 is a whole lot of money. But if you get 2,000 people to give you $81, like you could make a big something out of a little bit. Like, and we have limited resources in our, in the Bronx. So I think it's always important to highlight, like, a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us could come up with $81 or $60, $20, and we can make big impact with a little bit of resources that we have here. So we were already going to do it on our own. And then the rest of the world caught on and, doubled that goal, but we have the power right here. During my startup phase, I was working around the clock trying to get the store built. I had complete strangers cooking me dinner and popping up at the shop because they would see me just alone in there, trying to put stools together or a shelf or something. So I just want to shout out like the Bronx community at large. I don't even know everybody's name, but the hood has shown up for me since day one.
Noelle came to Lehman. I'm sorry. Did you want to finish saying something? Were you saying?
Go ahead.
When Noelle came to Lehman a few years ago, Chris Hayes was one of the people who he believed in this vision. And I remember that's one of the first times I saw Lovinger filled all the way up to the nosebleed section. Mm-hmm. And Chris Hayes was selling his book, and the president at Lehman was Jose Luis Cruz at that time, and he was way at the back of the line, and it was just this tremendous support. But I was privy to hearing people come up and say, thank you for what you are doing for the Bronx. Like, people really supported you. A lot of folks, I'm looking at the people on this call, and most of them are organizational leadership. What would you say was your leadership style, and how were you able to have people bought into your vision, the shared vision, and why do you think that is, and how did you do it?
I think it's a combination of I would describe my leadership style as like radical transparency, and that's the way I operate now, but that's always been my personality. I allowed everyone, the world, to follow my journey intimately, showing up on social media every day. That's some advice that I always have for people who want to start businesses but are overwhelmed by the whole thought of content creation. Is like, don't create content, just document what you're going through. And that's the content. And that's how I built my following. And like with that radical transparency. And actually, I want to just briefly note how I met Chris Hayes, because I think it's an important illustration of what we're talking about here. So I actually met Chris Hayes in Minnesota. Didn't know who he was. There was a book industry conference going on in Minnesota. Never been there before. And I just showed up while I was a prospective bookstore owner, and they happened to be having like an after hours thing called a Young Professionals After Party. Somebody gave some introduction notes, and I picked up the microphone right behind them. Didn't know anybody. I was nervous, and I was like, I got to get my message out here. There's so many people here, and I just got to be bold and apologize later. So I picked up the microphone and I started rapping. That rap would eventually become the pitch to my crowdfunding campaign, the one that, ended up going viral. Guess who was in the audience? Chris Hayes. So he approaches me after the event, and he's on Twitter, like going live. He's like, who's this girl? And he's best friends with Michael Moore, the film producer. And Michael Moore shares it. And that was like a big turning point. And I would say like my radical transparency and my boldness was like, I think that's what makes me a great leader. And those are just like some illustrations on like how that's worked out for me.
Wow. I mean, everything is so impressive. I'm going to ask you two more questions and we're going straight to the audience because I have the privilege. I know everybody must have a dying question. Who was your favorite guest because you had some pretty awesome people. The last one that we interacted with was Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I know there were more folks. So can you talk about like who were your favorite guests?
Yes. I love that I was able to bring him to Lehman. That was an amazing experience. All right. I don't know if I have a favorite, but no, I got a favorite because it was so recent. It was last week. Mary J. Blige, the story time at the Lit Bar. She launched a new book called Mary Can, which is a picture book for kids, just celebrating, being yourself and, empowering kids to know that they're enough. So that was dope. And her songs come on in the shop now and they hit different because that was amazing. That was a highlight of my career. Like I had like a bucket list of who I wanted to visit the Lit Bar, and I've literally crossed off every single person on that list, with the exception of Kerry Washington, who has a book dropping on September 26th. So I'm currently stalking her, but I feel like I don't have to do anything else after this point. I've got the pleasure of interviewing President Barack Obama, and I got him to throw up the X on the interview for the Bronx. That was the moment I felt like I made it. I've had Jennifer Lopez in the store. Alfie Woodard has been there. Slick Rick, Fat Joe. We didn't do an event with Fat Joe. He just pulls up all the time like, hey, I'm outside. But we posted a lot of people, but I feel like the most special events and visitors that we have are our local authors. And I say that like not just like to like not sound egotistical, but I really mean that because it feeds my soul, because we're connecting our local authors and our community to the publishing industry many times for the first time. I didn't know that this was a career option until I was 28 years old. That's how old I was when I signed that petition that I saw on Facebook. That really warms my heart, like to see these kids seeing themselves reflected in media for the first time, seeing adults see themselves reflected in the media for the first time, opening a whole world of careers to a community in publishing and writing and book selling. Like that's what makes me feel like a superstar when I go to these schools and these little girls. I'm like, oh my God, like they treat me like I'm Cardi B. So that like what makes me feel hype when I'm just like walking through the streets. I can't even get a bacon, egg, and cheese anymore without somebody approaching me or expressing how proud they are of me or that I've highlighted their voice. So that's like what means more to me than any of the celebrity visits. But those are cool too.
But that's why you are elevating the Bronx. And just so you know, Noelle, there is a Lehman connection to Kerry Washington. Her mom was a professor at Lehman. So you got to use that Lehman card.
Lehman is the plug. Noted.
Yes. But the last question, can you please tell us a little bit about Lit Bar? What goes on there for folks who have never been there? We want them to go. And then we're going to go into, if you have questions, folks, please put it in the chat. Janet, please feel free to jump in and ask any questions after.
Okay. So the Lit Bar is located at 131 Alexander Avenue in the Bronx. And just to give you the illustration, the block is incredible. Our neighbors are Choco Bar, Bistro, Cite, Hudson Barbecue, Playa Gelato, mostly owned by other people of color who are homegrown businesses. So like it's a vibe. Like we all feed off of each other and do a lot of collaboration. So come visit us on Alexander Avenue. Like you can easily spend the whole afternoon over there. So the Lit Bar is a bookstore, but it's also a wine bar, the Lit Bar. See what I did there? Lit like literature, lit like drunk. And it's a vibe. Like it feels like 90s R&B in the summertime when you walk in. We don't exclusively sell books by Black authors, but we sell books that will resonate with our community. Like I had mentioned earlier, like our inventory, when people come in and see it for the first time, like many times it's their first time seeing themselves reflected on covers. Like that is so important, to see yourself and your stories being centered. So while we don't sell any like particular culture exclusively, we center our voices, the conversations that are relevant in our community, and then everybody else is just welcome to participate. And that's what goes on at the Lit Bar. We host a lot of author events. We have one going on right now. I'm having a heart attack because I usually host 100% of them by myself. But it was important for me to be here today, so I will tell my team figure it out. We're launching Boogie Down Doodles, a local author named Stephanie Rodriguez from the Bronx. She's an illustrator and author. It's her debut book. So they're having a good time down there. And those are the type of things that are going on. I'm so honored to be the vessel to to give these opportunities and put our literary scene on the main stage.
Janet, is there any questions you want to ask before I jump into the chat?
I'll ask a quick one if you don't mind. I'll jump the list. So Noelle, there must have been times as you were doing this, right, when you felt like there were more obstacles, and that how are you ever going to overcome it, right? To go, even you said construction was a mess, whatever. So, and even now I'm sure there are things when you're like, oh, okay, this is another issue. How do you, what do you tell yourself to overcome that? Would you consider yourself a resilient person? We talk a lot about resilience in our leadership classes. Can you talk a little bit about how do you figure out to overcome obstacles?
So I'll be honest with you, entrepreneurship is ghetto. And I'm getting dragged. It's a fire every day to put out. I would say, because I've been through so much, like in my journey, not just in my business journey, but I would just say in life, like I had a very stereotypical upbringing coming up in the Bronx. My father, I was raised by a father and mom who did this and that, so I wouldn't have to. And I had a, kind of volatile upbringing growing up in Soundview. And every time I take a step, like the universe creates the stair underneath my foot. And after a lifetime of, just taking the next step, and the universe and a community meeting you the other half of the way and catching you when you feel like you're going to fall, you start to build a confidence organically. So after every crisis, you start to develop a trust that everything is going to come together. So there comes a point like where I'll react to challenges emotionally because I will fall out at the slightest inconvenience. But eventually I get up. I get up, and I think that's what drives that is just that trust. Like, you know what? You've been through COVID. You can't tell me nothing now. I survived COVID. I own a bookstore in the poorest congressional district in the United States. My business makes between $3 and $5 million a year, and I'm about to be 4 years old. I never saw these things, for me. So just these experiences where I've been put into where I didn't have any choice but to be resilient. It's just developed my grit.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to jump into these comments. So the first one is from Jasmine. I don't have a question, but I did want to mention that I've been to the Lit Bar and I was able to take my 2-year-old son there. And it is amazing to see the range of children's books you have to cater to specific ethnicities or beliefs. So thank you for allowing me to purchase those books for my son and for him to be able to relate to them.
Oh, thank you, Jasmine, for your note. That's why I'm here.
Courtney, a question for Noelle. If Barnes and Noble's closed down, I imagine it was due to not being profitable. How do you have the confidence to open a bookstore in the same area? And what is the difference about your store that Barnes and Noble's did not capture?
I love that question. So the difference between a Barnes and Noble and a Lit Bar, and I'll just use the category of independent bookstores, is that we reflect the communities that we operate in. From the inventory to our hiring practices, when you operate a big corporation, you're slow because you have all these chains of management and the bureaucracy. You can't really react to trends that fast. You have to appeal to the masses, which is white people. And whereas when you're operating and the community that you operate in is at the center of everything that you do, and you're small, you're lean, so you're able to react to trends in your market very quickly because it's, you're the end all be all, you're the leader. You get to make decisions. As far as having the confidence, I tested the market. I don't have a high risk tolerance. I'm not one of those entrepreneurs. Like I said, I had lit my life on fire. I was already doing exactly what I studied in school, making 6 figures at 23 years old. I was already very comfortable. So I don't have a lot of risk tolerance. So what I did was I started a pop-up shop to test the market. And I was always the top seller, making between $2,000 and $3,000 at every pop-up shop. I'm sorry, I've been trying to figure out how to turn my phone off for the, for the last 30 minutes, y'all. I'm sorry. And I started a book club, which went on to become the biggest book club in New York City. There we go. And I tested the market that way. And I would do these pop-up shops and book clubs in different areas of the Bronx and Harlem and see where people showed up, see how much money they spent on brunch and wine and food and on books, of course. And I did that for 3.5 years to test the market because I'm not a big risk taker. I need to see evidence that this is going to be viable because I had a lot that I was about to give up in order to, pursue this dream. So that's how I built the confidence, testing and learning. And if the dollars came in, all right, that's evidence. And also I was 28 at the time. And I felt like, if you're going to mess up your life, this is the time to do it. Like, when I don't have no kids. And I could live on peanut butter and jelly, but I wouldn't put like my kids through that. So I was like, if I'm gonna take a big risk, like this is the time to take the chance. And like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I go back to my job, which was great.
Noelle, you have a lot of love from the people in the chat. I see Marianne is like, I love the Lit Bar bookstore. Siobhan is like, I'm from Soundview. Maya is like, I'm so proud of you. And then Ibrahim has this question. I heard when you talked about when you got inspired to be a bookstore owner. I am truly impressed and inspired as well. Thank you for sharing with us. Now, as someone who may want to start up a business, regardless of the niche, what pointers would you give me as a young man with ideas of starting a business, and how can I stay motivated?
Okay, so what advice would I give to a young aspiring entrepreneur? Definitely, be bold. When I was nervous, of course, when I picked up that microphone in Minnesota, and I always ask myself, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen is like people tell you no, or that they say something you did was inappropriate. And I always think about like when I get older and I'm like in the next couple decades, and I mean old, like ready to retire. Like, am I going to remember any of those things? Am I going to remember any? And nobody, I'm not going to remember those people that you're afraid of embarrassing yourself in front of. Like, nobody's going to remember. We're all going to be over it. When we're on our deathbeds, none of that shit is going to matter. So just like go for it and be bold. The worst thing that could happen is you get enough. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. I would say, start building community. That was integral to my journey, is building community. And you want to be serving that community without an ask. When I launched my crowdfunding campaign, we had doubled that goal in 37 days. And people were so enamored by that because it was so fast. And like, how did you do this? The crowdfunding was over before it started, because I was pouring into my community, giving for years before there was even an ask. I had an incredible amount of patience. I didn't know that what my ask would be, or if there would be an ask, or how long I would be doing this. I did it blindly. And then people showed up for me because I was genuinely part of these communities. The book club, the pop-up shops, the online forums, just talking about books. So I had, I had already had a lot of support, and all I had to do was just go live, and the world met me the other half of the way. And then my last tip would be to like build something that people ask for. So I see a lot of, social media culture, everybody wants to be a boss. And it's interesting to me because I hear a lot of stories like, oh, I put my business out there, my family, my friends didn't support me, and strangers will support me. And that didn't offend me because my family and my friends weren't my target market. And if they had supported me, like financially or anything, that would have been like false data for me. I need the strangers every day coming into the shop, just being attracted to the brand. I just dropped my earpiece. Sorry. Those strangers that come in every day being attracted to my brand, that's who's gonna sustain my business, not my parents or my aunties and uncles, my friends. So I was grateful that I didn't have that artificial support in the beginning. And I want everybody like not to be discouraged by that. It is the strangers that you want holding you down. Yeah, that's my advice for starting out.
Noelle, Aliyah wants to know, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your experience with starting your own business? And you may have touched on some of this before.
The most rewarding aspect, so something that I haven't mentioned, like just personally, the freedom. It is very challenging to operate a brick and mortar, like the physical demands. I'm in the dustiest business you can imagine, books. I mean, actually dusty, like books. Like we're always cleaning in perpetuity. The boxes are heavy. We sell liquor. The liquor is heavy. So it's a lot of physical demands on my body. It is hard. It is grueling. But it is all worth it. And I would say that the aspect that encompasses it all is my freedom. I get to choose to do this hard work. I get to choose the people that I work with. I choose the brand deals and corporations that I want to work with. I choose when we're open, when we're closed, when I show up, how hard I go. And that is that's invaluable. Especially as a Black woman. I had opened before COVID, but 10 months, only 10 months before COVID. That's a whole nother interview. But I'm happy to talk about that time too. But we all hear about that whole concept of like quiet quitting and all these corporations wanting their people to come back to work in office. But there's particularly like a segment of people of color, like we finally got a break from all these microaggressions in the office and cultural challenges that we go through. And I feel that, like, just not being at anybody else's whim to tell me what environment I get to work in. I work in a safe space at the Lit Bar. So no matter how hard it is, I'm safe at work, emotionally, spiritually. And that's everything. You can't put a price tag on it.
Wow. We must have some organizational leadership folks on this chat, because boy, are these questions organizational culture based. Noelle, Courtney's second question is, having a business that is so personal to you, how did you go about hiring and developing your team and your staff, which is connected to what you were just sharing?
Well, I got an excellent education at Lehman College in human resources. That's how and then I went on to practice HR and worked my way up the corporate ladder. So I already had some experience in organizational structure under my belt. I had observed a lot of things in those corporate environments, like I was just mentioning about like creating a safe space for people to work. But I didn't have any control when I was at those corporations. So in the back of my mind, I would observe something and like, damn, I wish if only I had the power, this is how I would do things differently. So I had just been like racking up all these experiences and able to apply them. Like, these are the benefits and these are the gripes that I heard, while I was working, and I was able to implement them immediately when I started my own business. And I want to say, like, my approach is also not just for starting a business, but in how I lead my team, like with that radical transparency. I'm always honest, with my team. It has that radical transparency, like as much as it has served me, that also has its challenges, because when you're oversharer, that has some impact. But it's my personality, it's who I am. I'm probably not going to change. Like, I'll stop when it stops working for me. And I think my team appreciates that. It was the second part to that question. About developing my team. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm good at that. I don't think I'm good at like development. I feel like I've taken the Lit Bar as far as I can take it personally. Right now, we're in a period of transition where I'm like getting ready to more than double my team. So we'll talk about jobs in another conversation. I hope.
But I saw you when you came to Lehman, Noelle. You had interns who you were training on how to run an event, and I think that's developing young people and teaching them how to work in this and how to set up an event. And you were doing such a great job of that, just very naturally. And they were for young.
I will take that.
Elliot says, great opportunity to hear your words. Firstly, what type of change do you think the Department of Education needs to motivate high school students to read more, in hopes that this strategy can improve their chances of graduating high school? And a second part, what would be some ideas if the DOE contacted you to help create a new reading pilot program for high school juniors with behavioral issues and poor grades?
Okay, so just a disclaimer here. I am not an educator. So I'm entrepreneurial, and I have a personal love of reading and creating this access to literature. It's such a vital resource to us, a foundation for anything you want to do in life. But I cannot speak to like education or the like how it's structured, or I don't know. I don't know the answer.
But you make it accessible and you make it relevant.
I'll be honest with you, I've kind of given up on I've kind of given up on the powers that be, the adults. Mm-hmm. And I feel like us, not these big entities like the Department of Education and the politicians. I feel like we have the power on the streets, in our homes, as parents. I'm not a parent yet, but just in our communities, to make this change. And the way I've decided to approach it, because I'm tired of waiting for people to come save us. I have hope, but I'm not counting on it. Is the way I've decided to approach it is to tap into the resources that already exist here, tie in pop culture into into literacy to make it sexy, and let these kids know that this is cool and these are options available to you as in terms of a career, and resources for you to expand your mind and be entertained. But I can't speak to like what the DOE can do.
Mhm. You know, Noel, we say in student life, because we do co-curricular programs, our programs are only as good as the people who come to it. And so you get, we've done promotions, but people just love you automatically. I don't think we've gotten good love in the chat for people, but this is a crazy amount of cheerleaders in the chat telling you, thank you for talking to us, and they're proud of you. And this is what I also saw in person. Janet, I may have seen your mic on mute. Were you going to say something?
I just wanted to highlight quickly. So that's leadership, right? To everyone who's here. Noelle just said she's still hopeful, right? But she's not going to sit back and just wait to be saved, right? She's taking control, she's empowered, and she's using the resources to actually impact the community and impact so many lives that you probably have no idea how many lives you've impacted. So right there is leadership, not sitting back, but taking charge sometimes in a quiet way. Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. You know what? I do have like a structural that I would love to, like, if I could talk to the person who's in charge at DOE. But the Lip Bar is not a DOE vendor. And the reason why we're not a DOE vendor is because working with small businesses, we can't, it's big risk for you to have to accept POs. That means that I have to put that money up front and hope that Department of Education pays their bills on time. Now, I have personal experience with this. My mother and grandmother operated private schools for about 25 years in the Bronx. And they eventually went out of business out of 25 years because their balance sheet said that they had tons of money and the business was healthy, but because DOE didn't pay their bills on time, they cash flow didn't allow them to continue to operate. So my family's okay, but that was something that traumatized me. And I've gone through the application. It's very long and intimidating. So I would say to start there, like just making it more accessible for small businesses like the Lip Bar who want to work with you to be safe in doing so.
Really, really good. You're so layered, Noelle. Every time, like, I have to make sure I don't be going down rabbit trails. So I'm gonna stay on the chat here because you have so much good information. Sorry. Jasmine says, how do you go about deciding which books to sell, and how can an aspiring writer go about getting their books on your shelves, or even do a reading to promote their book?
So how we choose the books, one by one. I lean on my reps at the publishing houses who narrow down their very huge lists of titles, and we sit down once a season with each rep. Sometimes I have 5 reps at each house, so it's work. And we go through them one by one. They give me a little pitch and I say yes or next. I participate online in communities, and I just keep my ear to the streets about what my community is interested in reading. Generally, I pay attention to the conversations, and then I seek books that speak to those themes, and that's how I bring books into the store. In terms of working with like self-published authors and making sure local authors are represented, the first step is just having the patience to educate everyone on like how the business of books work, because authors tend to be like very romantic about the work. Actually, that's across the board. Like any artist across the board, like, the most important thing to artists is the art, the work. But actually selling it, it's a business. So first step is making sure that our independent and local authors are educated on how the business of books works, and making sure that those books are accessible, like making sure you have distribution. So unfortunately, there's only one wholesaler left in the US, called Ingram. So what that does is that allows any independent author to upload their work to Ingram for this, and to handle distribution and billing and all those things behind the scenes of the accounts payable. So that I'm able to place my orders in one place, pay my bills in one place, et cetera, et cetera. So that's step one, is making sure that the book is accessible to me on Ingram. We do not sell books. I've made 2 exceptions in my whole life because the content was hyper local, and very near and dear to my heart. But outside of those 2 exceptions that I've made, we don't sell books that are published by Amazon, and most independent bookstores have that same rule. That's another interview about why we resist Amazon. But that would probably be like an automatic disqualification if you publish using their platforms.
So we are going to go lightning speed now because you have a hard stop at exactly 6:58. We're going to stop.
Yes, I will try my best because I'm so wordy.
Okay. No,
I'm talking and I'm also having a whole 3 other conversations in my head.
no, it's good stuff, Noelle.
all related to this. So
Noelle,
I'll try.
We'll stay here till 10 o'clock with you, but I want to be good to your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have an event going on at the shop right now. I'm having an anxiety attack.
Okay. So Alicia said, when facing a challenge in your day-to-day business, what tools do you use to overcome it?
I cry. I fall out at the slightest inconvenience and then I get up. I am not Superwoman, y'all. I'm so sensitive. But what tools do I use? Well, first of all, I'm super organized. And I do brain dumps, like when I get overwhelmed. I utilize Notion, the app, the desktop program, to just dump all my thoughts out. I'm an excellent project manager. That's what I have on my side. And just taking big problems and breaking them down into little steps to just make the problem more digestible, and then just start tackling them one by one. And then there's some problems that I have that I still don't know the answer to.
Yeah. All right. The second one, now the people are all saying they love you, you're awesome, phenomenal, but I'm not reading, I'm leaving out those beautiful things. I'm getting straight to the question.
Please, can you download the transcript and send it to me so I can read anything that I missed?
I will send it to you. What is one thing you would do differently if you had to get to where you are now, if you're given the opportunity to go back?
I would have hired a CPA before I opened.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great approach to making reading more entertaining. Zoila, in a time when education is under attack, what we teach and what we read is being controlled. Even children's books are banned. Do you take a stand on banned books at the lit bar? Meaning, do you make them available?
So if banned books affected me politically, I wouldn't have any books. So I literally would not have any books. There is no basis on what grounds they're banning books under. So it's anything that spoke to Black or Latinas or queer folks would be banned, and that's literally all. That's literally what we censor. So my advocacy for books that are being banned comes organically because I'm grateful to be in New York City.
Thank you. Does the Lit Bar host book clubs, offer opportunities for people to discuss literature in the store?
Yes, absolutely. So the Lit Bar doesn't run an internal book club just because I don't have the capacity, but it is on my vision board. But we do offer reservations for people who want to start their own book clubs, and I'll give you some tips because I have lots of experience on running and operating a book club. So yes, we love you.
Very last question from Elliot. Do you have any, Courtney, really a third question? Elliot,
Come on,
do
let's do
you
it. Let's do it.
do you have any thoughts on the debate of which books with minority and LGBTQI themes should be permitted or disallowed in public schools?
I'm sorry, I gotta read that so my brain can process it. Do you have
No,
any
I
thoughts
read
on
it
the
too
debate?
quickly.
No,
Do
it's
you-
okay. Do you have any thoughts on the debate of which books with minority and LGBT needs to be permitted or disallowed in public schools? I don't have any kids, so I don't know if I would change my mind when I have them, but I believe that, well, not that I believe, sex and gender are not the same thing. Like sexual, so I believe that like speaking, books that speak to gender and people of different lifestyles that you're gonna come across in the world are appropriate conversations to have at any age. You're not hiding anything from your kids, I promise. But I do think that conversations about sex and sexuality should happen at a certain age.
Mhm. Courtney, I love your question. So yeah, let's ask you. How does a bookstore like yours deal with the emergence of ebooks?
We sell them.
Tell them. Yeah. Listen, Noelle, this is what Courtney answered, which is, he said, it's okay. We didn't have to ask this question. He's just so interested in this conversation. And this is the feel of you. It's your magic, Noelle, because we can probably talk to you for a few more hours, but we are going to close off tonight thanking you for this really, really phenomenal talk. Emily is reminding me that she will email you an evaluation, folks. If you want to copy the link and complete it now, it's very short, but we'll share all the good stuff you say about Noelle with her. So it's a great way to get your thoughts in if you wanted to complete it. She'll also email it to you. Noelle, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are always going to stay in contact. We want to stay connected to you.
Thank you so much for having me. One last closing thought, just to piggyback on that question. I'm not romantic about print books. I'm romantic about literacy, which is the foundation for anything that we want to do in our lives. So whether it be ebooks, maybe one day we'll be reading books with the words scrolling across our contact lenses. I don't know. But I'm here for all of it, as long as we're reading.
Thank you so much. Folks, thank you for joining us. I love to see your beautiful faces. I actually miss you, and I am on campus anytime. Feel free to stop by. Dr. DeSimone will stay on for 2 minutes with David and Patricia. Folks, have a good night, and feel free to join us tomorrow with Elias, who was from the White House and in the Obama administration. Thank you, Noelle. Have fun in your party downstairs.
Thank you so much, y'all. Have a great night.
Everyone.
Bye.